In the heart of Ibadan, where the air smelled of burning palm kernels and gossip traveled faster than Okada bikes, two girls loved each other more than blood itself. Bukky and Wummi, sisters not by womb, but by wound. For where one bled, the other scarred. From the dusty compound of their childhood homes to the echoing halls of the University of Ibadan, they moved in tandem. From their first chalk-smeared slates in primary school to late-night cram sessions before final biochemistry exams in tertiary school, they were inseparable. Bukky, the quieter of the two, was grace wrapped in humility. She had a softness that lingered in the air like a sweet fragrance, soothing, calming, her words rarely raised yet always heard. Wummi was the opposite in every charming way, fiery, spirited, the girl who always had something witty to say. Her laughter could fill a street, and her opinions could shut down arguments. She walked like the world owed her respect, and often got it. Yet in Bukky's presence, even Wummi softened. They were yin and yang, the balance to each other's extremes. The first time Wummi realized she loved Bukky more than anyone else, they were 7 years old, kneeling in the red dirt of Ibadan, splitting a single puff-puff between them. "You take the bigger half," Bukky had said, her voice barely louder than the rustling palm leaves above them. Wummi had laughed, her gap-toothed grin gleaming. "No, you're smaller, you need it more." But Bukky refused. She always refused. That was the problem. Years later, Wummi would remember that moment, the stickiness of sugar on their fingers, the way the sun turned Bukky's skin to honey, and wonder when giving had become a weapon. When her love had started to feel like a debt Bukky would never repay. Their friendship was not without tests. As children, they had fought over dolls and hairbands. As teenagers, they had argued about grades and boys. But always, like the tides returning to shore, they found their way back to each other. They shared food, sometimes one plate of amala between two. They shared secrets. Wummi once confessed she thought her father didn't love her, and Bukky had held her until the crying stopped. They shared dreams, long talks beneath the mosquito nets in their shared room, giggling into the night. Wummi wanted to run a famous fashion house in Lagos. Bukky wanted to heal minds, Wummi in a mental health clinic, help those like her uncle who was misunderstood his whole life. After university, they decided not to part ways. With their NYSC year behind them, they moved into a small flat near Bodija. It had a cracked ceiling and faded paint, but it was their home. They pooled their small salaries. Bukky worked part-time at a school, and Wummi was designing clothes and trying to build her brand on Instagram. They made promises, silent and spoken. "We'll always have each other," Bukky once whispered after a long day. Wummi responded, "Even when we marry rich, have kids, and move to Banana Island." They laughed, not knowing how cruel life could twist even the deepest roots. Everything changed the day Adamu arrived. He came not with fanfare, but with purpose. The son of a Lagos billionaire, Adamu wasn't loud about his wealth. He wore plain kaftans, carried an old journal, and spoke like someone who had tasted the world and wanted to rebuild it. A UK-educated architect, he was in Ibadan to oversee the construction of a youth center funded by his father's NGO. It was supposed to be a 6-month project, but he would stay much longer for reasons no blueprint could predict. Wummi met him first. She spotted him at a cafe near Dugba. Adamu wasn't like the other Lagos boys Wummi had met. He sat alone at the cafe, his fingers smudged with charcoal from sketching, his forehead creased in concentration. "Fine boy like you, dey draw building alone? Where your babe?" Wummi teased, sliding into the chair opposite him without invitation. He looked up, blinking as if surfacing from deep water. "No, babe, just concrete and dreams." His voice was low, calm, like a man who knew the weight of silence. Wummi tossed her braids, leaning in. "Dreams need company. Let me help." But when Adamu's eyes flickered past her to where Bukky stood shyly by the road, her arms full of textbooks, her anklets jingling softly, Wummi saw it, the shift, the recognition, and for the first time in her life, she wished Bukky had stayed invisible. Wummi and Adamu exchanged numbers. She invited him to a small fashion show she was organizing. He came, watched politely, and complimented her work. But it wasn't Wummi he returned to see. It was Bukky. It started with small things. A wave from across the street, an offer to help her carry a bag, then long conversations outside the flat. He was drawn to her stillness, her curiosity, the way she listened with her whole body. Bukky didn't flirt, she didn't giggle or show off, and that intrigued Adamu. "She's different," he told his friend Chuka one evening. "Not trying to impress me, just being herself." At first, Wummi didn't mind. In fact, she encouraged it. She teased Bukky mercilessly. "Look at you, therapist in training, now counseling rich, fine boys." She braided Bukky's hair before dates, gave her her best shoes, and even taught her how to contour her cheekbones. "Don't forget who found him for you, oh," she'd laugh. But deep in Wummi's heart, something small and sharp had begun to take root. A flicker of envy, barely noticeable at first, tucked beneath layers of laughter, loyalty, and years of sisterhood. She was the one who had spotted him first. She had broken the ice, Wummi Ned the door. So why hadn't he stepped through for her? Bukky, wrapped in the gentle unraveling of new love, didn't see the change, not yet. Her heart was wummining like petals after rain, slowly and softly. Adamu didn't just see her, he understood her. He asked questions no one else had asked, about her childhood, her quiet ambitions, the parts of her she usually kept hidden. And then he listened, truly listened. "He makes me feel visible," Bukky once whispered to Wummi, her voice laced with wonder. "Like I matter, like I could become someone." Wummi smiled, but it was hollow, like a song played in the wrong key. As the months passed, the bond between Adamu and Bukky grew roots so deep that even the winds of Ibadan gossip couldn't shake them. They were often seen walking hand in hand through the dusty streets of Bodija, laughing quietly, as if they were the only two people in the world. Adamu would bring her akara from her favorite roadside vendor or surprise her with books he thought she'd love. Books on healing, psychology, African spirituality. Their evenings were sacred. They'd sit under the mango tree beside Bukky and Wummi's flat, legs brushing, dreams intertwining. They talked about everything, how many children they wanted, what color their home should be, how they would support local youth through therapy and design. Bukky's laughter, once the soundtrack to her and Wummi's many sleepovers, now sang most often for Adamu. And Wummi noticed. At first, she tried to push the creeping discomfort aside. She convinced herself it was just growing pains. Of course, things will change, she told herself. People fall in love, friendships evolve. But every time Bukky canceled movie night or forgot their Saturday market runs, a piece of Wummi chipped away. That night, Wummi scrolled through Bukky's WhatsApp status. A blurry photo of Adamu's hand curled around hers. The caption, "God's plan." She hurled her phone across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp crack, the screen shattering, spiderwebbed, like the fractures in her chest. "She's not even that pretty," Wummi muttered to the silence. But every night, she found herself back there, watching. Bukky's statuses became a daily assault. Sun-drenched photos of her and Adamu laughing, pastel love quotes, videos of dinner dates, church outings, shared glances that said everything. Each one landed like a stone in her chest. "She's not even that beautiful," Wummi whispered one evening, alone in her room, the blue glow of her phone carving shadows into her face. Always acting so humble. Maybe that's what he likes, that fake modesty. But she knew it wasn't fake. Bukky had always been gentle, always sincere. And somehow that made it worse. Bukky wasn't pretending. She was just loved. And Adamu had chosen water over fire. The teasing faded. The affectionate eye rolls turned into quiet, watchful stares. She started missing Bukky's calls, blaming work or exhaustion. The weight of it festered, a cocktail of emotions, hurt, jealousy, abandonment. Wummi began to feel like a guest in her own life, invisible beside the radiant light of Bukky's new beginning. One afternoon, as the sun soaked the city in a humid orange glow, Wummi couldn't hold it in anymore. Bukky was folding laundry in their living room, humming a tune. Wummi stood by the window, arms crossed. "You don't have time for me anymore," she said, her tone coated with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Bukky paused, the song dying in her throat. "Wummi, it's not like that," she said softly, folding a blouse. "I'm just building something new, but I still need you, my sister. Nothing's changed between us." But everything had. Wummi looked away, swallowing the lump in her throat. "It's fine, I get it. People move on." Bukky crossed the room and touched her arm. "Please don't say that. You know your family. No matter what, I'll always choose you." But even as she said it, Adamu's call flashed on her screen. Her face lit up, her voice softened. Wummi watched it all with silent rage bubbling under her skin. The final blow came a few weeks later. Adamu proposed. He knelt before Bukky in the garden behind her mother's house, surrounded by fairy lights and the music of a live talking drum. Her family was there. So were close friends, including Wummi. Bukky burst into tears, tears of joy, of disbelief. She looked at Adamu like he had placed the stars into her hands. The family cheered. Her mother covered her face in a wrapper, thanking God. Wummi clapped. She smiled for the photos. She even hugged Bukky tightly and whispered, "I'm so happy for you." But inside her, a dam cracked. It wasn't just about Adamu. It wasn't just about love. It was about being left behind. Bukky, her other half, her childhood mirror, was stepping into a future that Wummi no longer recognized. Wummi wanted to be happy for her. God knew she tried, but something darker coiled around her heart, whispering, "She doesn't need you anymore." That night, while everyone danced and drank, Wummi sat alone on the veranda, her glass of wine untouched, her smile forced. She watched Bukky in her white lace dress, glowing like a bride even before the wedding. And she thought, if I can't have what she has, I'll make sure she never forgets me. The days that followed were strange. Wummi tried to fight the bitterness, but it consumed her. Every word Bukky said felt like a dismissal. Every wedding plan felt like a goodbye. The worst part, Bukky didn't even realize. She still looked at Wummi with love, still trusted her completely. So Wummi did the only thing she could. She helped. She became the best maid of honor Ibadan had ever seen. She planned the bridal shower. She negotiated with the tailor. She even helped Adamu pick out the wedding ring. People praised her. "You're such a good friend," they said. But in her heart, she was preparing for war. The wedding was beautiful. It was the kind of event that made strangers stop on the road to admire the decorations, the matching asoebi, the music, the joy. The ceremony was held in a grand reception in Bodija. Adamu wore his white agbada, trimmed with gold, while Bukky looked beautiful in her lace gown, her veil fluttering like a whisper of heaven. Wummi stood beside her, smiling like a sister should. No one saw the cracks. Wummi laughed, danced, and posed for photos. She delivered the maid of honor speech with such elegance that even Bukky's mother wept. But beneath the surface, her heart was a war zone. Her eyes followed every kiss between Bukky and Adamu, every tender glance. Her fists clenched with every "God when" from friends in the audience. By the end of the reception, she was exhausted, not from joy, but from pretending. After the honeymoon, Bukky and Adamu returned to Ibadan and settled into their new life in a modern apartment not far from where Wummi still lived. It was supposed to be a fresh beginning, marriage, work, dreams, and for a while it was. Then Wummi came visiting. She said to Bukky, "I feel so alone now that you are married." But Bukky, ever loyal, couldn't imagine life without Wummi. "Come live with us," she said one evening as they shared Puff Puff and Zobo. "There's a guest room. I don't want to lose what we have." Adamu was hesitant, but Bukky insisted. "She's like my sister," she said. "She needs us right now. She's still trying to find her feet." Adamu nodded slowly. "Okay, if that's what you want." So Wummi moved in. At first, it was good. They slipped into their old rhythm, cooking together, watching Nollywood films, laughing over past crushes. But something was different. The air was heavier now, as if the walls carried secrets. Wummi was always present, too present. She hovered when Adamu and Bukky were alone. She sat in between them on the couch. She knocked on their bedroom door for urgent things. She inserted herself into decisions, decor, groceries, finances. Adamu noticed. "She's not giving us space," he told Bukky one night. "She's just adjusting," Bukky replied. "Please be patient. She's family." But the more Adamu pulled away, the closer Wummi leaned in. She started wearing tighter clothes around the house, perfume that lingered long after she passed. She would casually touch Adamu's shoulder when she laughed or call his name in a sing-song voice from the kitchen. Bukky noticed, but she didn't say anything about that. Bukky trusted too much, and that trust blinded her to what was happening in the corners of her home. It started with little things. A shirt of Adamu went missing, only to appear days later on Wummi's laundry line. A dinner Bukky cooked was accidentally remade by Wummi with more spice, the way Adamu likes it. Then came the moments Bukky couldn't explain. She'd walk into a room, and both of them would go quiet. She'd find Adamu's phone in odd places. Once, she overheard Wummi humming the same love song Adamu had sung to her on their honeymoon. Still, Bukky said nothing. She believed in loyalty, hers and Wummi's. She told herself she was imagining things, that Wummi would never cross that line. But Wummi had already crossed it in her heart. Every time she heard Bukky say, "My husband," it felt like a slap. Every kiss they shared was a theft. And Wummi convinced herself that Adam wasn't really happy, that maybe, just maybe, he was regretting choosing Bukky. All she needed was a chance. Then came the change. Bukky, once glowing and energetic, started to fade. It began with migraines, then nausea, then long days in bed with no appetite. Her voice grew weaker, her laughter less frequent. The brightness in her eyes dimmed like a candle left in the rain. Adamu took her to the doctors. They ran tests. Nothing made sense. Stress, they said. Maybe something psychological. Maybe emotional. Adamu was worried sick. He stayed by her side, brought her food, and prayed over her. But Bukky wasn't getting better. And in the middle of all this, Wummi blossomed. She took over the house. She smiled more, cooked more, laughed louder. When Adamu was too tired to notice, she placed herself in his line of sight. She sat closer. She started wearing his shirts around the house, by mistake. And then came the worst part. Bukky got pregnant. It should have been a moment of celebration. Adamu cried with joy. He kissed her forehead, thanked God. Bukky smiled weakly, holding his hand. But Wummi? Wummi stood still, her eyes dark. She congratulated Bukky, of course, even cooked pepper soup that night. But her soul was burning. She had lost him again, this time completely. So she did the unthinkable. She began poisoning Bukky slowly, tiny amounts, mixed into her evening tea. A bitter herb she'd read about online. Nothing too fast, just enough to mimic natural illness, to make her weak, confused, tired. The herb was bitter, like crushed regrets. Wummi stirred it into Bukky's tea, watching the steam curl into the air like a serpent's tongue. "Drink," she urged, pressing the cup into Bukky's hands. "For the baby." Bukky sipped obediently, her once bright eyes dull with fatigue. "You're too good to me, Wummi." Wummi smiled, always. Later, she would rinse the cup, humming the same lullaby Bukky's mother had sung to them as girls. The one about the viper who loved the dove so much, it swallowed her whole. As things get worse, Adamu was devastated. Doctors were baffled. And Wummi? She was always there, caring, cleaning, feeding. She started calling Bukky my patient. She made jokes like, "I'm the real wife now, oh." Everyone laughed. Bukky smiled faintly. She didn't know it was more than a joke. Adamu started relying on Wummi for comfort, for advice, for support. The line between help and betrayal blurred. And while Bukky lay in bed, sick and fragile, her sister wore her robes, held her husband's attention, and smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Moral lesson: not every smile is friendship, and not every love is pure. The same hands that braid your hair can weave your downfall. True sisterhood means celebrating each other's light, even when it outshines your own. Beware the poison of jealousy, for it always kills the one who drinks it first. Watch out for part 2.